This broadcast today is being recorded in Tanzania, East Africa. You will hear, as it's being recorded outdoors, you'll probably hear some crickets from time to time or the odd bird singing. So, yes, it's a very nice place to record this in the open air. And my guest is Faye Cran, but Mama Kuku is the name most people know her as in Tanzania. Mama Kuku has an extraordinary story to tell, including her relationship with New Zealand and how it all began, and how it has been fostered and developed over the past 25 years. I will let Faye tell her story, but firstly, Faye, let's go back to the time you were born, who your parents were and who your family were, and what recollections of early life are still etched in your memory.
I was born in 1941 in the UK. My parents came out here. They were colonial, what we call colonial farmers in those days. 1947 we came out here. We landed on Lake Kisumu by flying planes. We settled in Sotik in Kenya in 1947. It was very bush. There was no roads. We used to have a bit of cloth on a bush. White cloth we turned left, red cloth we turned right. Our house was okay, it was all right. It was just a house. Most people built a store, and you lived in the store until they got money to build a house. Our toilet was a long drop down the end of the garden. There was no flush toilets. We got the first toilet because our neighbour thought he'd been bitten by a snake, and the story was after we treated him for a snake bite, they found it was actually a broody hen that had pecked him. But after that we got a flush toilet. So everybody was coming to see us because they'd never seen a flush toilet. It was new to them, a flush toilet. After Sotik, we then went to Tanzania. My father had a bad appendix burst. He was very ill. We went to Mombasa and then we came to Tanzania, to Moshi, where they bought a farm. I lived in Moshi in 1955. I left school by that time. I was only 13 when I left school. The nuns thought they couldn't educate me. So my father took me, I had to come home. My parents were very sick, both needed help. So I was running the farm. And then I came to Arusha. It was where I got married. I got to Arusha, that's when I got married. And I actually started with Rotary. My husband had started Rotary. He was a charter member of Rotary of Arusha. And he got me interested in Rotary. And actually, my contact with New Zealand started at the airport, Kilimanjaro Airport. The plane was late to going to Dar es Salaam. And there was a couple looking for a place to sit. And we said, well, can come and sit with us. And they were actually volunteers from New Zealand. And they told us what they were doing and asked what I was doing. And I told them at that time we were running in a Upendo leprosy home for leprosy victims. And they showed interest. And they had a visitor coming from New Zealand sometime later, I don't know how much later, and asked if they could bring her to us. And she came to see the leprosy centre. Jane Mulani was her name?
Jane Mulryan, yes.
She came to the leprosy centre, and she went back to New Zealand and met with Stuart. And Stuart asked Stuart what he's doing in Tanzania. He said not much. So she suggested when he came to Tanzania, he met me in Tanzania, and we went to the leprosy centre. And you immediately started as chef, clothe, house, educate and feed children. And from New Zealand they used to send us money for clothing, housing, feeding and education of the children. From then onwards, then Stuart invited me to New Zealand to talk at the district conference. And I did that, and after that I met Keith Stanton. And he told me he'd been in Uganda but never been to Tanzania. I invited him here. That was really how we started off.
In terms with Keith, that's right.
Yeah.
That's an interesting intro, Faye. Can we just go back to the days when you were in Kenya, and you mentioned that you had a flush toilet and what have you. But in those days, presumably, did you have electricity?
No electricity. It was all hurricane lamps. And the Kipsigis was where we were living. They used to catch these flies that light up at night, put them in a jar, and that was how they would use like a torch to walk around.
And what about transport? Were there motor cars or?
We had a motor car, but it was very rare. It was mainly walking oxen. You put your oxen cart with your oxen They go downtown, do your shopping, come back to go. That was mainly it was all done by Oxford. Yes.
So did you walk to school? You were presumably.
No, my school was 600 miles away.
Oh, it's a long way to walk. Yes. Yeah.
So they took me to school
So
in Eldoret.
you were boarding,
Yes.
boarding at school.
I was boarding at school. Yes.
And that was a Catholic school.
That was a Catholic school.
Uh-huh.
But then when we moved, it was by train. I used to go to school by train
Mm-hmm.
and come home by train. We'd get on the train maybe about 6 o'clock at night and arrive in Nairobi in the morning, and then get that Nairobi train to Mombasa, where we get there about 8 o'clock in the morning.
And in
the
those
same thing
days,
going back.
that would be steam trains, I take it?
They were steam trains, yes.
Those were steam trains, yeah. Not very fast.
Not very fast, but very nice. We had a lovely time.
Yeah, yeah. Very good. So, just on reflection, so what age were you when you arrived in Kenya?
6 years.
6.
Yeah.
And you went to boarding school at that point, did you?
Straight away.
Straight
yes.
away.
Yes.
Yes. And then when from there, from that boarding school, you transferred to Tanzania.
Yeah, I left school in 1955,
Right, yeah.
and my parents came to Tanzania at the same time.
Right, right.
My father had been very sick
Mm-hmm.
with a burst appendix,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why we went to Mombasa for a bit. But farming was in his heart.
Yes.
And so we came back, we were actually going to Naivasha to buy a farm in Naivasha. And my father at that time was selling Mercedes-Benz. And a customer came to Mombasa and his car was not ready. Usual problem, delayed in the docks. So my father said, take my car and I'll bring your car up and we'll change, I'll go on to Nairobi. So we left Mombasa with his car. I was to go to his place in Moshi. His name was Dr. White, and we got misdirected to Mr. Spate. So we ended up at a place called Spooky Spate, his farm, Moingo. And it was through landing there, my father gave up his option in the farm in Naivasha and bought Moingo. It's a long story, but that's how we ended up in Moshi, because the car was not at the docks, we got lost, and ended up by buying the farm we got lost onto.
What kind of a farm was it?
Coffee farm. 400 acres of coffee, a few head of cattle, and that's where I actually started my chickens as a hobby. I started there with 25 chickens as a hobby.
And this was prior to independence?
This was about 1955, long before independence. Independence was 73.
And then things changed though when independence came, didn't it? In terms of the farm and your ownership and...
Yeah, we were nationalised on the farm. Long time after independence actually. We were given an offer to sell out the farm. West Kilimanjaro, they took the offer. We didn't want to sell. We said no, we're staying here. We don't want to leave. But then we were nationalised. Then the British government said, we don't give you because you didn't want to be bought out. We never give money to nationalised farms. So we said, and Nyerere, the president, gave us the house and 5 acres for my parents' life and for my life. Until now I'm staying there, although the last few years I decided we should pay rent to the village. But we are still there. They have taken the farm, but we've kept the house and 5 acres.
So what impact did losing the majority of the farm have on the income for the family?
We're broke. They took everything.
Right.
They even took the typewriter, the adding machine. They took everything. But I got going again by I used to make jam. We had some strawberries in the garden, and I used to buy oranges and make marmalade, and I learned how to make golden syrup. So I used to go to the grocer and take down what I had made, and exchange it for food.
And how did your father get on? Was he able to continue to work?
Well, my father he was very sick. He really has. He was very sick with cancer.
Uh-huh.
We were given some roses by a man called Arthur Brown. He left the country, and he had a rose farm at West Kilimanjaro. So he gave us roses, which we planted in the far part of the garden. My father used to go out in the wheelbarrow. We hadn't got a wheelchair. We couldn't afford that sort of thing in those days. And he'd sit in the wheelbarrow and be wheeled around the farm to where the roses were growing and sit there with the people working on the roses. We never saw the flowers because they were always cut when they're in the bud. So we got the money from Dar es Salaam for the roses, and I got the money for the chickens, And that's literally how we got
So
going.
on this little farm of a few acres, you had chickens?
Yeah, we had 5 acres. The president gave us the house and 5 acres of garden. So we had all these rose bushes. We used to send somewhere about 100 dozen roses to Dar es Salaam every week. And I had the chickens. I had 25 chickens. Of course, we extended. We got more and more. My first 25, I didn't intend to sell them, but somebody came and gave me a good offer. So I sold those 25, and then I started doing broilers. 50 broilers, 100, 500, until by the time I'd finished, we were doing 150,000 a week. But all started with the 25.
So in those days with broilers, how long from
Those
it
days
being
it
hatched
took
to
a long
being-
time. It took somewhere about 3 months, but now it takes less than a month because of the way they've been breeding the genes and the food and everything like that.
So in those days, were they just fed on scraps and?
No, they were fed proper food, but genetically they were not formed to grow fast. And they were actually much tougher. Now they're more delicate. You have to be really careful when that the temperature is right and everything is done correctly, because they're so delicate. I mean, they can be without water for 20 minutes and you'll find they're dying. I mean, they are very delicate. But
Apart from the roses and the chickens, I was very pleased to go and visit this property earlier this week, and I noticed now you've got pigs there. Did you have any other animals at that stage?
no, we had
Goats
no
or
pigs. No, we had nothing.
No.
Just the chickens and the roses.
And again,
And the
transportation. How did you get around the place?
I bought a car actually. In the old days, it was very cheap. It was 20,000 shillings, and that's how we managed to move around. Yes.
And the roads would be pretty.
The roads were terrible.
Pretty tough.
The roads were terrible. In fact, my first job when I left school was to go with a lorry to town to pick up murram to make the road passable up to our farm, because we'd have to walk maybe the last 2 or 3 miles because the road would be so bad. So my father had me on a lorry. We hired a lorry going out, a common lorry, picking up murram and bringing it back onto the road.
You haven't mentioned your mother. She was there during this time.
My mother was just a great supporter for my father. She was in the background, but always there, supporting us. She was the secretary for the farm.
So at what point did you move on, so to speak, leave the nest and move to start on your own? Did you go flatting or?
It just came naturally. I can't remember. Because we were nationalised in 73, the farm was taken. So then I actually moved to the Ujama village because I wanted to try life in the Ujama village. I lived there for about 6 or 7 months. And I went, those things were very cheap in those days. I bought the house I have in Moshi for only 50,000 shillings. You came there the other day. The house going as you come in was 50,000 shillings. So I started there and I would do 1 chicken pen a week. It was costing only 800 shillings to build it. And I have great supporters in Nairobi. My people who I used to supply from Mawingo before we were nationalised supported me very much. And they were sending me chickens on credit. And my father was taken really ill. And they suggested I took him to the UK. Dr. Wright from KCMC said, don't keep him here because the farm's nationalised and the situation is very bad. Take him away for his operation. And I phoned the people in Nairobi to say, I'm not running away. I'm taking my father. And they actually came to the airport to meet me on the way through and gave me a telephone contact of his brother and said, if you ever have a problem, phone this man, whatever you want you'll get within 24 hours. They were great supporters to me. They gave me chickens on credit. I was able to get going that way. I never had a loan from the bank or anything like that.
Taking your father to England, did he come back again?
Yeah, we came back. We were there for about 2 months. He had the cancer operation. He wasn't doing well. The surgeon came into him and said, Mr. Sims, I've done all I can. You're not trying. And I can't afford to lose you with my reputation. So my father said, I'll start trying tomorrow. He said, tomorrow's too late. You start now. And my father got better. It was simply by the doctor, the surgeon, telling him. My mother stayed here. I went alone with my father, yes.
But they lived out their days on that farm?
On the farm, yes. They both died. My father died on the farm. And I took him down to the mortuary from the farm. My mother then moved in with me here. I persuaded, she didn't want to leave at all, but finally She's already 90, and she came here to live with us here, and she actually died here in this house.
So that's a big jump, thinking you were at that farm with your mum and dad, and then you came here. So explain how this all came about.
After my father died, my father was a mason, and we were at a function in Moshi for a Masonic do, and there I met Derek Cran. And somehow or other, I can't remember how, but when I was taking my mother to Nairobi, I came to New Arusha Hotel, that's right, with Abdul Faraji, and Abdul introduced me to Derek. And I said, I've been to the police station, trying to get a permit to take my mother through Nairobi to the airport. And Abdul turned to Derek and said, Derek, you'll take them, won't you? And Derek said, yeah, I will. If they can't get their permit, they'd come with me. So the funny thing was, I went home to my mother and said, I read this really nice old man. He's the sort of man who reads The Economist. How can I, as a country girl, talk to him? I can't. So my mother pushed me, ask him. So finally I plucked up courage. I said, can I come with you? Yeah, no problem. We got to his house in Arusha. There was no room in the car, so he took 2 cars. We got to the border. His permit had expired. So the man at the police said, you were meant to be back by now. You haven't even left. Your permit is no good. So I said to the policeman, please, will you find out the regional police commander Arusha? Because he knows us. It's all right. So he found the regional police commander. He said, Mama Kuku is here with our father. And our father's permit is expired. And he said, let them go through. So that was the start of me getting to know Derek through that. And then he used to phone, I'm going to Kenya. Do you want anything? So he used to help me bring back spices for my sausages, stuff like that. And that's how the relationship formed.
Prior to Derek coming along, though, lots of things had happened in your life. As a single woman, you adopted some children, didn't you?
That's right.
Yeah, tell us about that.
One of the times after we were nationalised, I was staying with a lady, Mrs. Shivji, in Moshi, and she had 2 children she was looking after from the Precious Blood Convent. And then her husband was killed in a car crash coming by Sami. Wind blew the car off the road and he was killed. And she decided to go to Canada to her family. So I took over Michael and Joyce at that time. So at that time they were about 4 years old, 5 years old. And I applied to adopt them and it was refused. And I said, so what are you going to do with them? So they can stay with you. So they stayed with me. And then when I married Derek, then he adopted them. As a single person, I was not allowed to adopt them. But once I got married, we could adopt them.
You both adopted them jointly?
Both of them, yes. Derek adopted them both.
And that's, how many years ago was that? Because they're
1980.
1980,
Yeah.
Yes.
January 1980.
Yeah, and then, of course, you've still got Michael living at home here with you, even today?
Michael's still living today with home, yes.
With his...
Not living at home, he's home because of you.
Right.
But he looks after chickens in Moshi.
Uh-huh.
And Joyce is in UK. She's coming out next month with her son, Derek. She called her son after Derek, our husband. My husband, yeah.
Very good, yes. So I recall Derek when I first came here in 2001. I recall we arrived at the airport, myself and another gentleman from New Zealand who was a Rotarian called John Somerville. We'd determined to come to Tanzania to see just exactly what was going on here. And we arrived at the airport and there was nobody there.
I had forgotten. Well, I'd come the wrong day. I'd gone the wrong day, hadn't I?
You'd gone to the airport the day before.
Yeah, I'd gone to the airport the day before and they weren't there.
Forgot about the time changing.
Yeah.
Yes. So fortunately, we'd met a Rotarian on the plane coming across from Nairobi, I think it was. And anyway, we rushed outside and said that we were expecting someone to meet us, and they hadn't arrived. And he said, well, he knew you, and he arranged for us to come here by taxi. And so my first recollection of you and Derek is when we drove up in the dark, and this place was all in the dark, and the lights came on, and you both came out to greet us.
Yeah. I remember I came the wrong day.
That's right.
I came the day before.
So the reason, perhaps I'll just come in here, the reason why myself and John Somerville came in 2001, as Faye had said, she met this lovely lady called Jane Mulryan, and Jane had got in touch with me, because Jane was here in Tanzania on behalf of the New Zealand government, and Jane sent, or got in touch with me actually. She rang me, I recall, and asked me what I and what Rotary in New Zealand was doing in Tanzania. And as Faye said, my answer was absolutely nothing. And so I sent you a fax. I don't know if you remember that. I sent you a fax.
I know something came, yeah. In those days there were faxes.
There was only faxes.
There's no telephones in those days.
So I explained who I was and that Jane had been in touch, and I said, you know, is there anything we can do? And you sent me a list.
A wish list.
Yeah, a wish list within 2 or 3 days. And on that wish list was one particular thing that caught our eye, and that was the leprosy rehabilitation centre at Upendo, and the fact that you were looking for accommodation, extra accommodation for families, and also for solar for the buildings.
Yeah.
So I went back to Jane Mulryan and the New Zealand government and said, well, here's a couple of projects. Do you think that Rotary and the New Zealand government could share? And it was agreed that we would, and they were both about the same cost. So Jane said, well, we'll do the solar, you do the building at Upendo. So that's when we came over in 2001, John and I, just to see what Tanzania was, where it was, and what it was all about. And basically it's gone from there. So perhaps, Faye, tell us a bit about Upendo, because Upendo started, I think, in 1995, is it?
Yeah.
And it's still going today. But
Yes.
leprosy is reduced somewhat in Tanzania now?
It is reduced because of awareness. There was no awareness of leprosy. People thought it was a witchcraft. They were frightened of them. We started this, we walked actually from the clock tower in Arusha to Kilimanjaro airport. The Rotarians all walked. We pushed a golf cart and collected money, and with that we were able to start the building at Upendo. And we moved. The people had been living on the riverside with in really squalid conditions. There was no food. They were scavenging for food out of dustbins and things like that. But they moved into Upendo. We were able to get a lot of help from all over the place, all over the world, helping to build and to support them going. And well, till now it's going. The sisters are the precious blood, because Rotary can't, once they've built something, they should get rid of it. They should let somebody else run it. So we got the Sisters of the Precious Blood to run it, and they are still there till now. A lot of people have got self-reliant, learned how to be self-reliant, and gone home to their villages. We get support for all the children get supported for school fees and the food. So the whole thing is supported and is doing very well.
That's
So you'll
right.
see it.
Just so the people in New Zealand can understand, you know, you mentioned that you arranged a walk to collect some money. Now, I'm pretty sure in New Zealand it would be very hard to get people enthusiastic to do a walk. Not so much to do a walk, but you tell us how long that walk was.
We walked for 25 miles.
25 miles.
From Arusha Clock Tower to the Kilimanjaro airport. And the Rotarians from Moshi walked from Moshi to meet us at the airport. And the golf cart that raised the money is still at the airport. So people leaving can put their loose change they've got left with them into the box. So we still get money from it, which goes straight to the sisters. We don't go there anymore. The sisters take that.
Well, that's fantastic, yeah. So I remember that first visit to Upendo, there was something like, was it 200 people there at the time with the families and other people?
No, it was about 84,
80,
yes,
84,
84.
Yes, I remember there was one chap who had a mouth organ, and
Amos.
he would play this mouth organ, and they'd all gather around and they'd sing the African national anthem and then the Tanzania national anthem.
They also had tins they used to put stones in and rattle, and they were a very, very happy crowd. Yes, very happy crowd.
Now there's a young lady there called Upendo Rotary.
She's still there.
She's still there. Tell us the story about Upendo, because that's quite fascinating.
Actually brought there by her mother, but she was not a leprosy victim. And I was actually in the UK at the time, and they said, you can't leave her because she's not a leprosy victim. This is home for people with leprosy. So one day the mother ran away and left the baby there. And the baby was really suffering with malnutrition. It was really horrible state. And when I came back only just 2 or 3 days later, I took her to Dr. Chamba. Dr. Chamba said, any movement of this child will die. Don't take her home, because I want to bring her home. He said, no, the change will be too much. Leave her where she is, let her keep as she is. You know, he gave me things like glucose and stuff, said, give her this. And she made it, she grew up. She's now working at Upendo. She works for the sisters, keeping the house clean. She's got a bit of a problem. She's not really all there, but her head goes very big and things like that. It was how she suffered as a baby. But she's still there, and she lives there, and the sisters employ her to keep their place. She's partly very, very good at cleaning. Everything is spotless. So she's there.
I recall she had, when she was very young, something wrong with her legs, and Rotary...
Yeah, we had both her legs in hospital. We had to straighten. Her legs were crooked as they were born. They had their legs, she had both her legs in plaster of Paris, like that, for quite some time, to get her legs straight.
Was she taken to South Africa to fix that problem?
No, it was just here. It was done here in Arusha.
Excellent, excellent, yeah. No, so that's a wonderful piece of work, and continues today. Following Upendo, which John and I obviously came and visited, and we were supporting that. From that point on, New Zealand Rotarians started to do other projects, and I remember we did one or two smaller water projects in villages, tanks and water pipes and what have you. But then I think you came up with the idea that we should build a market at Tengeru. Tell us about that.
That was for the centennial. We had a lot.
Centennial of Rotary.
Centennial of Rotary.
Yes.
There have been a lot of people. The market was just on the roadside, and a lot of people were being killed by passing vehicles, and they were asking, can we do something? So we decided, as a Rotary Club of Arusha, I was a member of Rotary Club of Arusha at that time, we decided for the centennial we would build the Tengeru market. And that's where you came in. So many people came in and gave money for building this market. And till now the market, I think over 1,000 people a day go through that market, even now.
Yes, I should tell the listeners that the funding of that market was Rotarians in New Zealand, right across New Zealand, joined in and raised money towards the market, but then the New Zealand government gave us a grant under their grant scheme at the time, 4 for 1, so we were able to raise something like 250,000 New Zealand dollars to contribute to building that market. And just to give listeners some idea as to how big the market is, there are two shelters where they sell their goods. The ladies and the men sell their goods, and I recall one of them is 250 metres long and the other one's 270 metres long, so that's a pretty big area to sell produce. It was quite exciting because in 2005 you were able to get the President of Tanzania, His Excellency Benjamin Mkapa, to come to the opening. That was
he actually flew back from Germany for the weekend to open it. He said he would be there for the opening, and the regional commissioner told me he can't be here, he's in Germany. Suddenly the regional commissioner phoned me at night, Mama Kuku, the President is coming, get to the airport, quick, he's coming tonight. And he came the night before to open the market on a Saturday, and he flew back to Germany again after opening the market. It was really a very special day.
It certainly was a special day, and there was a huge crowd there.
Oh, absolutely.
Crowd there.
Yes. I still have the photographs.
I recall the President, he actually spoke for an hour, I recall. He spoke in English for a few minutes, basically welcoming myself and explaining the relationship between Tanzania and New Zealand and the New Zealand government, and he also said that he'd actually met our Prime Minister at the time, Helen Clark,
That's right, yes.
the year before in Geneva. And then he spoke to the people about the land that the market was on, that the land had not been taken from anybody, because at that time there were issues going on in Zimbabwe, and so the President wanted to assure the people that what was happening in Zimbabwe would never happen in Tanzania, that people would be free with their land. And then after that he switched to Swahili. I have no idea what he said. They spoke for about 40 minutes. It was very entertaining. There was cheers and clapping and all sorts of, until he finished. Pick him up to take him. He said, no, I want to walk to the main road. Do you remember that?
And he had a hip operation.
Yes, that's
He
right.
was walking very carefully with a stick. He'd had a hip operation.
That's right.
But he walked through with the crowd.
He was a remarkable person, and for listeners, I'm sure listeners have heard this from me before, but I'm the honorary consul for Tanzania in New Zealand, and that all came about by His Excellency Benjamin Mkapa making reference to that to me when I was here, and then he approached the New Zealand government to see whether they would be agreeable to appoint me to that role. So that was Tengeru market, but if you also recall, the President sent a car to pick me up the next day to
go to
Mwika.
That's right.
And do you want to talk about that? What happened there subsequently?
Maybe you tell the story.
Well, basically, the President wanted a similar market to the one at Tengeru to be established at Mwika, and so I was driven there. I was met by a number of people up there, including a gentleman called Dr. Sadikil Kimaro, who I think at the time had some...
He was the advisor to Mkapa.
He was an advisor to Mkapa, that's right. And again, to cut a long story short, similarly the funding was raised by Rotary in New Zealand, subsidised by the New Zealand government, 4 for 1, and then that market became a reality, and that opened in 2008. And then subsequently...
You did the dairy?
They wanted a dairy processing plant, so a processing plant to pasteurize and sell milk on behalf of the subsistence farmers. And subsistence farmers can own 1 cow, 2 cows. If they've got 8 cows, they're a big farmer. And so that dairy was established some years later, and again with 3 grants from the New Zealand government. And today that's producing 7,000 litres of pasteurised milk a day. But let's come back to Faye, and Faye, tell us about some of the other bigger projects that have taken up your time over the years in respect of Rotary. Tell us about the street children and your activities with street children over the years.
Yeah, I've been involved for nearly 25 years with street children. We had a centre at Majachai. More recently we built a big centre here at Lakitatu. We had a problem with the village. The government changed our boundary at Majachai, so we came, instead of being Majachai village, we came under Lerai. Lerai we found them more difficult people to deal with, and so we decided we had to move. Although we were renting the land, they were not happy with us. They kept saying, why are you bringing cows in? What are we getting? You've altered the kitchen. What are we getting for your altar in the kitchen? The whole thing was very unpleasant. So we decided to start somewhere else. So now we have a big centre at Lakitatu, which will take 96 children. New Zealand have done most of the rooms, the units. A lot of support from New Zealand for there. Rotary gave us money, $70,000. We have built accommodation for chickens, cows, pigs, goats, rabbits, and horticulture. And we are there not only to train the street children, but also the rural women, how to be self-sustainable. And we show them how they should plant properly, look after their crops, how they should look after chickens, pigs. Everything is there to show them how they're meant to do it. We don't actually train them, we show them. They come there themselves and they work. Because we work on the basis that if somebody tells me something, I hear and I forget. I see and I remember, but I do and I understand. So they come here to actually do their work. And also the sisters are coming helping us to show local people how to sew. I think you saw that lady yesterday made a very beautiful dress. They've been coming for about 2 months now. They're showing people how to do tailoring, rural women who've got no jobs. So they're there, and she made a very beautiful dress yesterday. I was very impressed with it. And so they can sell that, and later we hope by the time they've left they'll be able to buy a machine, so they'll be self-sustainable. We have people in the workshop learning how to do carpentry. We're starting blacksmith, we're not going with it yet. The sisters are going to teach cooking to the local women. So we're just all progressing, slowly.
facility. How many acres have you got there?
Only 4 acres.
4 acres.
Yeah.
And that includes all the buildings.
The building, everything is 4 acres.
And then you've also got some of the fields planted in rice.
We have nearly 1.5 acres of rice, because it is a rice area. But we're trying to make it self-sustainable with the chickens, the pigs, the goats. We're trying to make all that so the project is running without omba all the time. Because currently we're getting money from New Zealand, we're getting money from local donors who now started giving us money here. And we get money from Canada, a lot of money from Canada. So we want to try and make it so that we don't rely on other people. We can actually produce our own milk, own chickens, rabbits for marketing, so we make enough money. Currently we have enough to be about 60% sustainable. We want to make it 100%. That is our aim.
What are the ages of the young people there?
Anything from 6 to 16. They're young. We take anybody. For example, I was having lunch about 3 weeks ago in a place called Utamu, and I got a telephone call from Kenai saying, I have 3 children, welfare have asked me to take them. Their mother ran away, their father ran away, so they went to their grandfather for help. 3 young children, boom, 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 about 3, 4 and 5. They went to grandfather. The grandfather took the welfare office and said, I can't do anything, can you help me? So they were talking, taking down details. He told them, I'm just going out to the toilet. He disappeared. So the welfare officer was left with these 3 children. No food, no accommodation, no parents. So Kenai phoned me and said, what do? I said, we have to take them. What can you do? So we took them and we fed them, and now they're on our outreach. They've gone back, their parents have taken them back, but we follow them on our outreach so we can pay their school fees, we can help them get going. We have 43 children on outreach because we try to unify them first with their families if we can. So the ones that left are ones who have absolutely nobody. But anybody with a child or a parent, we try to unify them back to their parents and then help their parent be sustainable, self-sustainable. And we pay the school fees for the children.
96 live in? Or
we will have 96 live-in, yes.
Yeah. And 43 currently.
So far, 43. But we're trying all the time to reunify them. Anybody who can be reunified, we take them, we reunify them into their families. We have somebody like God Listen. God Listen came to us as a street boy. We put him through school, we put him through education. He actually made it to university. Then after getting to university, he couldn't get a job. He was trained as a teacher in university. He did, I can't remember what he did. He did, anyway, it was something to do with English literature. But he couldn't get a job. So we sent him through Rotary to train as a tour operator and a driver, or tour guide and a driver. And then he's now working for the tour companies. And every month he has been sending $300 of his tips back to us to help other children. He'll be here this afternoon.
300 US dollars.
300 Canadian dollars.
Oh, 300.
300 Canadian dollars through his tips that he got from the tourism. Send it back to Tom, who's the financial controller for Upendo.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing.
He's never forgotten. He's all the years, he's about 5-6 years since he left, but he still does this.
Do the children, do they get any exposure, any training in terms of the animals and what have you?
Yeah, they have to work with the animals, so they learn naturally by working with them how they work.
And does this include those from the 6-year-olds up?
Yeah, they start with the chicken. You saw the little chickens outside in those little huts. Mm-hmm. They're the little ones. They have the charge of those. And our plan is later to hatch chicks from those, which we then give to the people on the outreach. So they have maybe 20, 30 chickens in the house, which can scavenge around and eat and give them some eggs. And
Leki Tatu gives them 3 meals a day.
Sorry,
The children get 3 meals a day.
They eat very well. They eat very well.
And they go to the local schools.
They go to the local schools. The younger ones go to the Faye Cran school, and the other ones go to the school nearby, which is called the Major Chai Secondary School. The ones who have passed very well go to Muungano, where you put in the toilets yesterday. You opened the toilets because they're really the top.
Sure.
And the boy goes there. And Faye Cran School told me yesterday they were the number 8 school in the whole of Tanzania in the exams. They were amongst the first 10. I said, how many is it? We were number 8 amongst the whole of Tanzania. The headmistress told me yesterday.
I think I'll tell listeners a bit about a gentleman, a Christchurch gentleman, Keith Stanton. Now, Keith has been in Rotary, was in Rotary for many, many years, and I think Faye mentioned earlier in the interview as to her meeting with Keith. And since that time, Keith gave the funding to build a school, which is called the Keith Stanton School, and then subsequently gave a substantial amount of money to build the Faye Cran Chem School. Faye didn't want the school called after her, but Keith didn't give her any option. That was it. It was going to be the Faye Cran School or nothing. Sadly, Keith died in Christchurch in July. He was in his 91st year. So one of the reasons I've come over on this occasion to Tanzania is to once again recognise here what Keith has done for the people of Tanzania over the past 30 years, firstly with World Vision and then in the last 15 to 20 years through Rotary. A magnificent effort, something like $2 billion he gave to the people of Tanzania to build the 2 schools that I've mentioned, but also to build boreholes and a whole manner of other projects, toilets, wash hand basins, and a number of other things in the community. So we have this week recognised the work that Keith has done and what he contributed to, and we have set up memorial stones in both of those schools just to recognise his effort. So just coming back to the Faye Cran School, Faye, how many students are there?
There was 900, but currently there's, I think, 760 children,
and
day schools.
The numbers reflect the changing movement of
Yeah,
people
it started,
in the villages.
the idea of Keith's idea was it should be an English medium school. But we found through the government that a lot of the children, all the children were for single mothers who used to work on the flower farms. And when Corona came, they were unable to export their flowers, and most of the flower farms they were just abandoned. So the women had no jobs. So instead of being an English medium school, it's been changed to a local government school. So all they do is they bring in a bit of posho or maize, beans and stuff like that to pay for their side. There's no actual school fees they have to pay. It's all helped by the government. We handed over to the government, and they are doing this to help the children. Because really, Rotary is about helping the poor people, not about the rich. So the idea of English medium had to be abandoned, and we went there to help them. As you saw yesterday, they're all from single mothers, yes. Mainly from single mothers, yeah.
Certainly a magnificent school, and it's going to be there for many, many years to come as a result of the generous donation that Keith made towards that school. In addition to schools, education and livestock and whatever, Faye, you've been doing a lot of remarkable work in schools generally with water and sanitation. Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, as you heard them say yesterday at Muungano, a house without a toilet is not a house. A school without a toilet is not a school. They were telling you that yesterday. Keith was very keen on not only sanitation, but clean sanitation, washing hands, things like that. So most of the schools, Moshi, Arusha, we have done a lot of schools. I can't tell you how many, or if I haven't worked it out, but well over 100 schools have had toilet blocks and hand washing facilities put in through Keith. Some classrooms have been built. Offhand, I can't remember how many, but it's a lot.
Yes, and for our New Zealand listeners too, I'd like to mention that we have a family in New Zealand who the senior members of the family live in Auckland, retired doctors, and then the younger generation, when I say younger generation, probably in their 50s, they live in Australia. and that family over the last 10 to 15 years has also contributed a very large amount of money, something I think around in the vicinity now of probably 300,000 plus, to provide sanitation and water in schools. They particularly wanted toilets to be built, and also to make sure that every child had a wash hand basin to be able to have clean hands. And so I just want to recognise that family who live on the north shore of Auckland, and their extended family in Australia. Interestingly enough, they're not Rotarians. They've had no interest in joining Rotary, but they see Rotary as a credible organisation that they can bestow their money on and know that it will be well spent. And certainly I can assure the family that that certainly has been the case over the years, and we look forward to that continuing in the time to come.
They have been actually fantastic. And I think this trip you have visited 6 schools?
6.
That
Yes.
they have sponsored the toilets.
Yeah, it's quite amazing.
It's absolutely amazing what they've done, yes.
So Faye, what about the future? Lake Tautu, we still require some cash to complete the activity there, don't we?
Let's hope so.
Yeah, you will complete it, but I'm just saying for the listeners in New Zealand, they might like to consider making a donation to Rotary New Zealand to assist with Lake Tautu.
With Lake Tautu, we need still about 40 million, how much? Somewhere about New Zealand dollars, about 40,000 to complete. We have done 7/8 of it. We still need to do the final girls' dormitory, the security, the gates and stuff like that. So any donation is really gratefully received, for that I for sure.
Tell me about the staffing of Lake Tautu.
By government laws, we have to have a social worker, a manager, a child care for the boys, a child care for the girls, a social worker mated for the boys and mated for the girls. So that becomes very expensive to us, besides the people doing the training. But local people now, I've just literally found, because we used to have money from Blossom in Canada, used to send us $25,000 every year, Canadian dollars, but that stopped in January this year. So locally have helped us a lot, but that is really a big problem to us currently, to find the money. We also have to feed the children. It's not easy, but we're struggling along, and children are fed very well, very well.
Yeah, no, it's remarkable what you're doing there. I noticed when I was there yesterday, there's a volunteer. Tell us about.
Yeah, we have volunteers coming. Asta is a very special one. She came the day you arrived. She comes every year. She just loves the children. She comes from Belgium. She's by herself, but she saves money. She applies here and there everywhere. She has got us the money for the biogas. I think she sent us nearly $12,000 for the biogas. So we're dependent with the chicken, the cow manure and the pig manure. We do all the cooking. We don't have to cut down trees to make the firewood for cooking. She has given us a lot of money towards drainage for the rainwater harvesting. She's applied for things like tools for the horticulture, tanks for the water. Not big, enormous things, but very, very helpful. Her name is Asta, and her father left her, I think, $12,000, and she gave it all to us for the biogas from the cows and everything, and that is now working and cooking. And she's come, I think, for the 5th year running now. She's come here. She'll be here for this time for longer. She'll be here till after Christmas.
Tell us a bit about Rotary in Tanzania and how it sort of operates here. It is different to New Zealand, but can you just tell us about how the Rotary organisation operates here?
Well, I was a member of Rotary of Arusha, and they are doing actually a big thing on toilets. They also try raising money to do things like we raise from you, and also they do walks and things like that. Moshi is also trying very hard now to raise money by doing walks, international dinners, that sort of thing. But Tanzania, we don't have so much money. In Tanzania, we don't have so much money. People are not rich here to give like they do in overseas countries. If we have an international dinner, we charge people, they come for the meal, and we can make $1,000, things like that, for small things. But we can't do big things like you help us. Without you, we would not be able to succeed, as we have done.
Just for listeners too, Tanzania, the population, the last census was 66 million a couple of years ago. And I should imagine the real population is much higher than that, because there would be a large number of people who didn't register for the census. But another interesting thing is at that time, 42, I think it was, or 44% of the population were under the age of 15, which is not uncommon in Africa, and certainly is not uncommon in the Southwest Pacific countries like Tonga and Samoa and Fiji. So we've got this big problem coming up in the next decade or two, as all these young people who are under age 15 become teenagers, become young adults, and need to have employment and whatever. But it's great to see that young people here yearn for education.
They do,
I think
sure.
I've said on a previous broadcast, the shocking absenteeism in New Zealand in schools is a disgrace, really, and following after COVID, amounts 44% and 50% were quoted by government officials as to being what the absenteeism is in New Zealand. But here in Tanzania, I understand it's literally from 0 to 2%. Doesn't get much above
they love
2%.
school.
So young people are craving to be educated, and I've been visiting a number of schools this week, as Faye has mentioned, and to go into a classroom where there's 115 children, it just shows you how enthusiastic they are for education, and the whole education system here is under huge stress. They certainly haven't got sufficient schools, they haven't got sufficient classrooms, and so that's why there's a good deal of overcrowding in the schools. But the kids are all happy, they're always happy to see visitors, and they're having their exams right now.
Yeah.
And yes, so education, it's something here that young people crave for, and I wish the same enthusiasm for education was reflected in New Zealand, but sadly it's not. So Faye, we're sort of coming towards the end of this interview. Is there anything you'd like to tell us about things going forward? What you see, how you would like to see Tanzania develop over the next few years, and what you would like to see, the benefits you'd like to see for incoming generations?
Mainly I'd like the young generation to be more sufficient, to learn not trades, not so much to learn academically, because there's a limit of jobs, but to learn other things like being a mason, a carpenter, a farmer. I think they've got to learn to branch out, because even the children who've left university, they've not found jobs. There's a lot of people unemployed. I'm told 600,000, I don't know, but they've got to learn to branch out to do other things. That's as I see our future here.
And in terms of this increasing population and whatever, how do you see that impacting in the future?
You know, we brought about this. So many kids used to die. So many children died before their 5th birthday. We have all put our efforts to stop the children dying. So now we have overpopulation. And I think until the parents, your child is your future. As you know, there's this one lady at Majo Church that's having 32 children or something like that. But it's really a disaster. But basically now I think the parents are learning that 2 or 3 children is sufficient. They shouldn't try for... They always had so many because they knew so many would die. So somebody was left, and it's always been a big thing to have big families here. I don't know. It's a hard problem here. It's a hard problem here.
But despite all this, Tanzania is really, you know, when I come here, and I've been coming here now since 2001, and you get a good feeling when you come to Tanzania that things are on the improve.
There are happy people here.
Infrastructure is on the improve. Yes, as Faye says, they're happy people. I know there's crime in Tanzania, and there's crime everywhere. We have crime in New Zealand, sadly, but a lot of it is petty crime, just crime for people to be able to survive. They have to, unfortunately, take what's not their own. But generally speaking, I think Tanzania is really coming into its own, and long may it continue. So there we are, Faye. That's nearly an hour. We've chatted away. It's been great to talk to you, and it's been great to be spending time again in Tanzania. I'll be here for another week before I return to New Zealand, and I look forward to visiting some more schools and having another session at Lake Itatu. I look forward tomorrow to visiting the Upendo Rehabilitation Centre for Leprosy.
That's tomorrow.
And Faye, we wish you all the very best. And we look forward to, in New Zealand, Rotarians in New Zealand and the general public, to be able to support you as much as we can. And for our listeners, if you'd like to learn more, you can go on to Google and just type in Rotary New Zealand World Community Service, and that will take you to contacts and what have you. And we'd love to hear from anyone who would like to support the work that's being done in Tanzania here by Rotary and other organisations. So thank you, Faye. It's been great speaking to you.
And thank you, New Zealand, for all the work you've given to us, the money. Without you, we wouldn't have done what we've done. So I have to say thank you very much to you.
Thanks, Faye. Thank you.